We decided not to build the Titanic as an actual, floatable ship. So then the question is, what do we build? How do we break it down? What do we really need?
Most people have seen Titanic at least once. Some have seen it more than twice. But almost nobody has caught what has been sitting in plain sight since 1997. Buried inside one of the most watched scenes in cinema history. It took decades for anyone to stop and notice that something wasn't right. So, what did the producers miss? Let's find out. Titanic, Where Love Meets Disaster. The film Titanic is a historical romance disaster story directed by James Cameron. It tells a fictional love story set against the real-life sinking of the RMS Titanic in 1912. The movie blends history with drama, following two main characters from different social classes whose lives become connected during the ship's maiden voyage across the Atlantic Ocean. Titanic was released in December 1997 by Paramount Pictures and 20th Century Fox. Its release strategy positioned it as a major holiday season film, aiming to attract wide audiences during a competitive box office period. Despite initial concerns about its long runtime and high production costs, the film gradually gained momentum through strong word of mouth and repeated viewings, which contributed to its growing popularity in theaters worldwide. The story focuses on a young woman named Rose, who comes from a wealthy family and feels trapped by social expectations. She is engaged to Cal, a man chosen by her family for financial security and status. During her time aboard the ship, she struggles with pressure, control, and a lack of personal freedom, which shapes her emotional state at the start of the journey. Jack, a poor artist who wins a third-class ticket, enters the story as a free-spirited traveler with a very different outlook on life. He lives without wealth or status, but carries confidence and openness. His presence on the ship allows him to experience a world he normally would never access, and he quickly becomes connected to Rose through chance encounters that grow into a close relationship. As the voyage continues, Rose and Jack develop a bond that crosses the boundaries of class and social structure. The romance between the two characters becomes the central emotional focus of the film. Their relationship develops through shared experiences, conversations, and moments of trust. This connection challenges Rose's expectations about her future and introduces her to a life that feels more independent and self-directed. Alongside the romance, the film builds tension around the ship itself. The RMS Titanic is presented as a massive and advanced vessel, believed to be safe and unsinkable. As the voyage progresses, subtle warnings and small incidents hint at potential danger, although most passengers and crew remain unaware of the seriousness of the situation. The turning point of the film occurs when the ship strikes an iceberg in the North Atlantic. This event sets off a chain reaction of damage that leads to flooding in multiple sections of the ship. Soon, the scale of the problem quickly becomes overwhelming. The situation shifts from a normal voyage into a large-scale emergency that affects everyone on board. As water begins to fill the ship, passengers scramble in different directions in an attempt to secure their safety. The crew works to organize evacuation procedures, including the use of lifeboats. However, the limited number of lifeboats creates a critical imbalance between the number of passengers and available escape options, forcing everyone into a shared struggle for survival. At the same time, the personal journey of Jack and Rose continues, with their efforts to stay together and survive the crisis. The ending of the film moves back to the modern timeline introduced at the beginning. An elderly Rose recounts her experience from the voyage, connecting the past events to the present day. This framing device brings closure to the story and reinforces the idea that the events of the Titanic left a lasting impact on those who experienced them. The production of Titanic involved a significant budget, making it one of the most expensive films of its time. The scale included full-size partial ship replicas, detailed interiors, and massive water tanks built specifically for filming. These resources allowed the crew to simulate flooding scenes and large crowd sequences. The ambition behind the project reflected a shift in Hollywood toward large cinematic experiences that relied heavily on both physical sets and digital enhancements. But it wasn't without challenges. The hidden mistake. In the decades since the release of Titanic, many fans have watched it again and again. Some people know the story so well, they can name every line of dialogue and every shot. Still, even with that deep familiarity, there was one tiny detail almost no one noticed for years. This small error did not change the story, but it stood out once people finally saw it. The blooper happens in a scene late in the film, long after the ship has begun to sink. At this point, Rose is trying to find Jack in the chaos. Water is rushing in, the ship is tilting, and people are running in every direction. In the background of this frantic moment, something appears that does not belong to the setting. It is a person who seems out of place. In the first couple of frames of this shot, a production member can be seen rushing up a staircase. Only part of the person's foot and shadow are visible. But that was enough for sharp-eyed viewers to spot it once the clip was paused. It was likely a crew member who somehow stayed in the shot when the scene was filmed. The person appears only for a brief moment, but that moment was enough to catch the attention of online fans once it was pointed out. The film's production was enormous. There were hundreds of extras, actors, crew members, and technical staff on set during many of the big scenes. With so many people moving around during long takes, it was possible for someone to be in the background by accident. This small human presence did not affect the main story, but it was an unexpected trace of the real world left in a carefully crafted historical scene. For years after Titanic premiered in 1997, almost no one noticed this tiny slip. People talked about the love story, the ship sinking, and the emotional power of the ending. They discussed the music, the acting, and the special effects that made this disaster look so real. No one focused on a figure on a staircase until social media and video platforms allowed fans to slow down and study every frame. The moment did not become widely known until someone online shared a clip of it and asked others to look closely. Once that happened, viewers began to rewind their own copies of the film to see if they could spot the same thing. Some found it instantly, while others had to pause and zoom in to believe what they were seeing. This spread of discovery showed how detailed fans can be when they really focus on a film they love. This kind of error is not the same as a modern object accidentally appearing in a historical film. In many bloopers from other movies, you might see something like a coffee cup on a table in a medieval scene, or a wristwatch in an ancient setting. In Titanic, the error was subtle and human, hidden in motion and shadow, rather than a bright object. It took patience and attention to catch. People who study movies closely know that even big films can have small mistakes. Directors and editors try to remove every flaw before a movie is released, especially when the budget and attention to detail are so high. Titanic was known for its careful recreation of the past, so finding this tiny trace of the real production world was surprising. It reminded viewers that even the most polished movies are made by people. Because the mistake was so brief and so hidden, most viewers never see it during a normal watch. It only appears for a second or two, and the chaos of the scene makes it easy to miss. It was not a distracting moment when the film first came out, and many people have watched the movie hundreds of times without ever noticing it. That is why the error stayed hidden for so long. Once the blooper was shared online, it spread quickly among fans of the film. People began to share their own screenshots, freeze frames, and slow-motion clips showing the same moment. Some compared it to other famous movie mistakes that were only discovered years after release. The reaction was not one of anger, but of surprise that something so small could go unnoticed for so long. Film scholars and casual viewers alike discuss why this mistake might have happened. In big scenes with water, movement, and many people, it is difficult to control every detail. Crew members often work behind the camera, but sometimes they must step into a position for technical reasons, such as adjusting lights or equipment. If a moment like that appears in a long take, it can slip past even careful editors. The fact that this moment was discovered many years later also shows how modern technology has changed the way people watch movies. With streaming services and digital players, viewers can pause, rewind, and zoom in like never before. When Titanic was first released, most people watched it in theaters or on VHS tapes. Those formats did not make it easy to freeze a single frame and inspect every detail. Today, fans can slow the film down to a single frame and examine parts of the set that no one would have looked at before. That has led to many discoveries like this one, where small inconsistencies are brought to light long after a film's release. In the case of Titanic, some people even say that moments like this make the film more interesting. They remind viewers that movies are created by real people working under real conditions, and that perfection is rare in any large project. Struggles up behind the scenes. The production of Titanic was one of the largest and most difficult filmmaking efforts ever attempted. The director, James Cameron, pushed the boundaries of what movies could do, both technically and creatively. The film was built around a massive reconstruction of the ship and many different filming techniques that had never been used together before. This scale meant that the editing team had to review large amounts of footage, far more than most films require. From the very beginning, the film's budget and scope were massive. The production budget was around $200 million, making Titanic one of the most expensive films ever at the time. Building full-size sets, including a life-sized replica of the ship's deck and interiors, required huge crews and long hours. Scenes were often shot in large water tanks that held millions of gallons of water, and each take could involve hundreds of people, props, and moving elements. Because of this scale, filming took far longer than planned. The original shooting schedule was meant to last about 138 days, but it stretched much longer as the team worked through challenges. Many scenes had to be repeated or adjusted because of water effects, lighting issues, or mechanical problems with the sets. These delays meant that the editors received more footage than they had expected, increasing the complexity of their task. During production, Cameron was known for his intense focus on detail and realism. He insisted that every scene look as close to real life as possible. This approach extended to costumes, props, and camera angles, which added to the volume of material that needed to be reviewed later. The editing team had to sort through hours of takes for each scene, choosing the best performances and angles, while maintaining continuity and pacing. The film also used a mix of practical and digital effects. Practical effects involved real water, moving sets, and physical props, while digital effects were used to enhance or complete shots. For example, miniature models of the ship were filmed and then blended with computer-generated imagery, CGI, to create the illusion of the massive vessel breaking apart. This hybrid approach required editors to work with many layers of footage that had to be combined carefully. Because so many techniques were used, the editing team had to manage footage from different sources. They had material from large set pieces, miniature models, CGI, and motion capture elements. Each footage came with its own different challenge. Practical shots often had imperfections that editors needed to correct, while digital shots required synchronization with real actors' performances. Sorting and organizing all this material was a huge job that took many months. The crew also faced pressure from the studios financing the film. As the budget climbed, executives became nervous about whether the film would succeed. Rumors circulated that the project was over budget and behind schedule, adding stress to everyone involved. This pressure extended into post-production, where editors had to meet deadlines while also satisfying Cameron's high standards. These conditions made it harder to catch every small detail in the footage. Post-production was another massive stage. Visual effects teams worked alongside editors to integrate digital and practical elements. This work often happened under tight deadlines, and new effects were being developed even as editing continued. Coordinating between departments added complexity, because changes in one area could require adjustments in another. Editors had to track versions of scenes and ensure that the final cut flowed smoothly despite all the moving parts. With so much footage and so many decisions to make, it was easy for a tiny detail to slip through. Editors had to prioritize the biggest and most important elements of each scene, focusing on performances, continuity, and overall flow. Small background details, like crew members moving equipment or subtle reflections, could be overlooked in the process of shaping the larger story. These kinds of tiny elements were often not visible until later viewing by fans. The size of the film also meant that editing was not done by just one person. Multiple editors worked together to piece the story together. Collaboration was necessary, but it also meant that communication had to be clear. With so many hands touching the footage, it was possible for one person to miss something that another might have noticed. In a film this large, even careful teams can miss small details when they are focused on bigger narrative choices. Because Titanic was nearly 3 hours long, the amount of material to edit was immense. Many scenes had dozens of takes, and editors had to compare each take carefully. Choosing the best performance, angle, and timing for every moment was a painstaking process. While editors focused on making the most powerful scenes, small background elements were sometimes not given the same level of scrutiny, especially when they did not affect the main action. The sheer volume of work also meant that editors worked long hours to meet up. Fatigue and time pressure can make it harder to spot tiny inconsistencies. When you are reviewing hours of footage day after day, your focus is often on the major elements that shape the story. Minor details in the background can easily be missed when editors are concentrating on performances, camera movement, and emotional beats. Even after the first cut was completed, further revisions were made. Scenes were trimmed, rearranged, or enhanced with new effects. Each revision introduced the possibility that small things could be lost or overlooked. With so many changes happening late in the process, keeping track of every tiny element became even more difficult. Editors and effects teams had to make fast decisions to keep the project moving toward release. In the end, the film was completed and released to audiences around the world. Its editing team had succeeded in shaping a massive amount of footage into a coherent and powerful story. Still, the huge scale of the production meant that not every detail was perfect. Tiny background elements, buried in complex scenes, were left unnoticed for years. These small slips are understandable given the size of the task and the many challenges the team faced. James Cameron's perspective. When people began to notice tiny mistakes in Titanic, they expected the director to respond. The movie's director, James Cameron, was famous for being very careful and demanding accuracy in every detail of his films. He spent years researching the real ship and its history before shooting began, and he pushed his team to match that research on set. His reputation was one of precision and high standards. Because of this reputation, many fans were surprised when a few errors were pointed out. Despite the online attention, Cameron did not immediately rush to publicly admit every small error that fans found. In fact, when the film was later re-released in 3D years after the original premiere, Cameron said that no frames were changed from the original version, even though he had noticed some mistakes himself. He chose to leave the film as it was rather than alter it for perfection. This decision showed that Cameron saw the movie as a finished artistic work. Once it was released, he believed it should stay in its original form, even if tiny details were not perfect. He felt that making changes later could disrupt what audiences already knew and loved. This choice was unusual because many directors use later releases to fix small issues. At the same time, Cameron did publicly address other kinds of errors related to the film's portrayal of real people. One of the most talked about controversies involved the way Titanic depicted First Officer William Murdoch. In the movie, Murdoch was shown acting in a way that many people later said was inaccurate to real historical accounts. Because of this portrayal, Fox Studios and Cameron issued apologies to Murdoch's family and supporters. They acknowledged that the depiction of Murdoch was not a fair reflection of what historical records showed. New evidence from later investigations supported Murdoch's role as someone who helped passengers during the disaster, not the way the film showed him. This moment was important because it touched on a real person's legacy. At the same time, Cameron also explained technical choices he made during filming when asked about certain scenes. For example, he discussed why a key romantic scene between the main characters was slightly out of focus. He said that because they were shooting during a real sunset, they only had a short window of time to get the shot. This meant they could only do a couple of takes, and the out-of-focus moment was a technical trade-off they accepted. This explanation showed how creative decisions sometimes outweigh technical perfection in filmmaking. Cameron did not hide that the shot had an issue. Instead, he explained why it happened and why it stayed in the final film. Many people saw this as a sign of honesty and professionalism in how he handled criticism. His kind of mindset shaped the way the film was made. Even though Cameron did not go frame by frame to fix every tiny detail later, he was known for insisting on accuracy in many areas. But despite his perfectionism, Cameron sometimes chose not to correct things that were already built into sets or models, especially if changes would require rebuilding expensive parts of the production. Some errors remained because of the practical limits of filming large scenes with complex sets and effects. The way Cameron responded to both praise and criticism influenced how people saw him as a filmmaker. Some admired him for his commitment to realism and his refusal to compromise his artistic vision. Others felt he could have been more open to correcting even tiny mistakes when technology allowed it. This debate became part of his legacy as one of Hollywood's most ambitious directors. At the same time, Cameron's decisions also shaped how Titanic continued to be discussed long after its release. People did not just talk about the story, and the love between the characters. They talked about how the film balanced historical accuracy with dramatic storytelling. Cameron's choices about what to fix and what to leave alone became part of that larger conversation. His handling of these issues shaped how audiences understand the movie's blend of fact and fiction. Even years later, Cameron has spoken about how people continue to ask him about scenes and choices in the film, including how characters lived or passed away. He has expressed frustration at some recurring questions, but he also shows that he stands by his work and the decisions he made during production. These reactions and responses became part of Titanic's legacy. They showed that even a director known for perfection can face criticism and have to decide how to respond. However, Cameron's choices helped shape how the film is understood and remembered by audiences around the world. The fact that fans still search for errors and discuss them online shows how deeply Titanic has been studied and remembered. Legacy beyond the screen. After Titanic was released in December 1997, its impact on movies and culture was heavy and long-lasting. The film reached audiences around the world and became a shared experience for millions of people. It changed both how many viewers thought about epic storytelling in cinema and how studios measured success. This influence continued to shape movies and the film industry long after Titanic first left theaters. One of the biggest measures of Titanic's impact was its performance at major awards. At the 70th Academy Awards, the film received 14 nominations, tying the record for most nominations ever at that time. It won 11 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director, a feat matched by very few films in history. These wins helped cement the movie's reputation as not just a commercial hit, but also a critically acclaimed work. The film also set new box office standards. With an initial worldwide gross of over $1.8 billion, Titanic became the first film to surpass the billion-dollar mark in global ticket sales. It stayed at the top of the box office for many weeks, showing that audiences were drawn not only to action or fantasy films, but also to emotionally rich dramas. This success encouraged studios to take bigger creative risks. Because of its financial success, Titanic influenced how studios thought about large-budget films. Before its release, very expensive romantic dramas were seen as risky investments. After Titanic, studios began to rethink what kinds of stories could be profitable. They saw that audiences could connect with a film that blended emotional storytelling with grand spectacle, leading to more ambitious projects in the years that followed. The film's cultural impact went beyond just money and awards. It became a topic of conversation across countries and age groups. People discussed its characters, its music, and its powerful scenes. Many viewers watched the film more than once, and some scenes became deeply familiar to millions of people worldwide. This shared experience made Titanic more than a movie. It became part of popular culture. The movie also helped shape audience expectations for epic films. After Titanic, viewers came to expect a mix of strong emotional storytelling, historical settings, and impressive visuals in large films. This combination became more common in Hollywood and international cinema, as filmmakers aimed to create movies that could move audiences emotionally while also offering visual spectacle. In addition to its influence on filmmaking, Titanic affected how films were marketed and distributed. The movie's long run in theaters, remaining popular for many months, showed that a film could continue to draw audiences long after its opening weekend. This helped change how studios planned release strategies, with more focus on sustaining interest over time rather than relying solely on a strong opening. The film's popularity also led to many re-releases in theaters. Years after the original premiere, Titanic returned to cinemas in new formats, including 3D versions. These re-releases introduced the film to new generations of viewers and reminded older fans why the story had resonated so deeply in the first place. Each return to theaters reinforced its place in cinema history. Even a stage musical based on Titanic was created, showing that the story could live beyond the screen and connect with audiences in live theater. The movie's legacy also extended into how people remembered the real Titanic disaster. Although Titanic was a fictionalized story, it sparked renewed interest in the historical event itself. After the film's success, more documentaries, books, and discussions about the actual sinking of the ship appeared, showing how the film brought attention to history for many people who might not have otherwise explored it. In the years since Titanic premiered, its influence continued to be seen in other films and media. filmmakers and writers often cited its blend of romance and disaster as a model for creating emotional engagement. Some films aim to capture similar themes of love, loss, and human struggle against overwhelming odds. This narrative influence showed that Titanic had helped shape storytelling trends. Actors in Titanic also saw their careers shaped by the film's success. The leads became internationally recognized stars, and their performances were celebrated around the world. Their rise in fame showed how a single film could change the trajectory of careers and influence the kinds of roles actors were offered afterward. This effect added to the movie's broader impact on the entertainment industry. Titanic also played a role in discussions about technology and filmmaking. Its use of both practical effects and computer-generated imagery showed how new techniques could be combined with traditional filmmaking. This encouraged other filmmakers to experiment with technology in service of storytelling, pushing the boundaries of what could be achieved on screen. Audiences continued to share their experiences of watching Titanic long after its release. Many people talked about seeing it in the theaters with family or friends, making memories that stayed with them. These personal connections showed that the film had become more than just entertainment. It had become part of people's lives and memories. The movie's enduring popularity also made it a reference point in popular culture. Even decades later, people compared new films to Titanic, discussing whether they could match its emotional power or cultural reach. This ongoing comparison showed that the film had become a benchmark against which other cinematic achievements were measured. Because of all these influences, artistic, cultural, technological, and emotional, Titanic remains one of the most discussed films in cinema history. Its impact continues to be felt in how movies are made, marketed, and remembered. Long after its release, it stands as a reminder of the power of cinema to move audiences and shape culture. What are your thoughts on the movie Titanic? What other blooper did you notice while watching the film? Let us know your views in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.